watching the Sports Central Showdown.
What's up, guys? Welcome into another installment of the Sports Central Showdown. Chris Hayre checking in this week, joined by Metzker, Alex Hutton. And this week's topic, gentlemen, it's very appropriate, NBA playoffs. Is the Lakers' 2020 bubble title the hardest NBA ring ever won? Graham, why don't you kick this topic off, my friend?
Oh, Chris, I would love to. There's nothing I love talking about more than the 2020 bubble Lakers. And I caught some flack when I said a few episodes ago that I thought it was the toughest ring ever. Let me tell you why. Every playoffs, it's all about availability. You know, can you stay healthy enough to make the long run? This is the one playoffs in sports history, from what I can tell, where every single person was guaranteed to be available. Those Kawhi and Paul George Clippers, they had their chance. They had plenty of time to get healthy. Giannis as well. How about James Harden and Russell Westbrook? They got healthy. Damian Lillard healthy as well. Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. We've seen plenty of postseasons where they can't make it healthy together. This time, the Lakers took out all of these teams. And a lot of people will say it's unfair that the Lakers got that time off, especially because they reference Anthony Davis as being injury prone. I'm here to argue that the Lakers had the most to lose by the NBA getting put on pause. Just before the NBA shut down in March 2020, the Lakers were off dominant showings against the other two best teams in the NBA record-wise at that time, the Milwaukee Bucks and the LA Clippers. So the Lakers would have had home court advantage throughout the whole entire playoffs. They had to cede that. They gave away the fantastic Los Angeles home audience that they so deserved from having such a dominant 2019-20 regular season. This is also not to account for the fact that there was a global pandemic and everything else going on, all the injustice in the country in 2020. There was so much more that these athletes had to deal with at this time. There was a time we didn't even know if the NBA season was going to come back. The Lakers overcame all of that and were absolutely dominant in doing that. That's why I believe the 2020 Lakers is the toughest ring.
Alex, a lot of solid points from Graham. What say you, man?
Chris, Graham, I'm here to argue that the bubble, yes, it may have been tougher on the mental side. I think this was actually one of the easiest rings of all time on the physical side of things, with no travel, without those road trips kicking in and wearing teams down. I think that made things easier for a team like the Lakers. A very, very good team, obviously. But when you're not having to deal with that, I think that gives those better teams an advantage. The bubble without that kind of travel, I think, gave the Lakers that advantage that they needed. When we're talking the toughest ring of all time, I'm going to throw it back a little bit. I'm going to take us to the 1995 Houston Rockets, who won as a 6 seed. That's the lowest seed ever to win an NBA championship. They had to beat the 60-win Jazz with John Stockton and Karl Malone, the 59-win Suns with Charles Barkley and Kevin Johnson, the 62-win Spurs with the Admiral David Robinson, and then the 57-win Penny and Shaq Orlando Magic. Never had home court in any round, had to win 2 winner-go-home games on the road, won 5 elimination games in total, including a 3-1 deficit they overcame in the second round, and they did it in a title defense, adding to the grind of the season, and in a season where they just had to play all the way through. They didn't get that break. They didn't get that time during which they didn't have to travel and didn't have to have that time, have that break where they could focus on their physical health. Instead, they had to just keep playing basketball for longer than anybody, and they still managed to pull it off. I think that's the toughest ring ever.
Alex, the easiest ring? I'm sorry, Chris. I just cannot let that slide.
In some aspects, yes.
I cannot let that slide, Alex. You said Houston never had home court in the playoffs. Gosh, that sounds a lot like the 2020 LA Lakers, even though they had the best regular season record. Also, Alex, you're telling me the toughest ring is one where Michael Jordan wasn't even playing, just so happened to grab the 2 years where MJ wasn't running it in the 90s?
Certainly that does put a notch in the Rockets championship, but you still look at all those.
Alex, that's your GOAT. That was your GOAT, MJ.
He certainly was, and you know what? He was my GOAT because he was playing in an era with so many great teams and great players, teams like the ones the Rockets had to go through and beat without having home court advantage. And you're right, Graham, the Lakers, they didn't have home court advantage because everything was in one place, which means they never had to go on the road. They never had to take those long road trips or go into hostile environments on the other side of things. Something that the Rockets were doing in every single series they played in those playoffs and still won all of them.
Graham, before I mention a couple other Lakers teams, I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on. Do you think that people hate on the bubble title because they didn't get to experience it, because they weren't there, because there was no parade? It seems like even LeBron, people who maybe don't like LeBron as much as a Kobe or other Lakers greats, kind of give him flack for that title just because I don't think they got to experience that parade down Figueroa.
We're still waiting. I still need that parade down Fig, Chris. Even if it's so many years late, I still want it. I'll still show up. This has such a crazy butterfly effect on LeBron's career, especially as a Laker, because it was the shortest offseason of all time, going from 2020 to 2021. No one had played more games than the Lakers. Even then, even through all that, we were seeing one of LeBron's greatest seasons at his high 30s in 2021 before Solomon Hill took out that ankle. And I can barely even get through that sentence without feeling bad about it. But you can't talk about 2020 ring without seeing what happened after that, how the Lakers were put at an unfair disadvantage.
Yeah, you know what that 2020 ring and the subsequent season showed us? It showed us that title defenses are really, really hard. You know who managed to defend their title? The 1995 Houston Rockets, despite it a very obviously up and down regular season, entering the playoffs at 47-35, they still stuck with it and pushed through all those series to win the whole thing.
But Alex, MJ was still playing for the Birmingham Barons, so I don't know. I'm going to give you guys a few more Lakers teams to kind of chew on. The Kobe Powell era, 08-09, people forget that was a kind of a grind. You had a 7-game series with the Rockets that was mixed in with a brutal 6-game series with the Nuggets that felt like it was a 7-game series. I mean, that Nuggets team was really, really good. And I showed you, gentlemen, what game 2 or how game 2 in regulation ended between the Magic and Lakers, a missed layup by Courtney Lee that could have maybe changed the trajectory of that series. And then, of course, having to go down 3-2 to the Boston Celtics in 2010, win 2 games at Staples Center, down by double digits in the second half, where Kobe didn't have much going, but his rebounding kind of did it for the team in the fourth quarter. Powell delivered, and of course, meta world peace.
Alex, my Laker brain is exploding. So many things just fired synapses in my purple and gold brain.
I wanted to let you take that one first.
Let me just step up real quick first. The one thing I will remember most about the 2009 NBA Finals, Chris, is that it was the best chance to get Kobe versus LeBron in the NBA Finals. Our Orlando Magic were a fantastic team, but the fact that it robbed us of that Kobe and LeBron championship that we deserve, I cannot say that it's the toughest route to a ring.
You can't talk about the hardest rings of all time. I'm sorry, Graham, but you can't talk about the hardest rings of all time without giving at least a little bit of mention to the 2011 Mavericks. Dirk Nowitzki carrying that team with not the greatest supporting cast you've ever seen, but carrying that team all the way through to the finals and then taking down the LeBron, Bosh, Wade Heat. Obviously, that one I think has to be considered anytime this conversation comes up.
All right, gentlemen, how about we throw up the shot clock? Graham, give me your final case for this bubble Lakers team.
I thought the Lakers were robbed of a championship when in the middle of the pandemic, it came out that Avery Bradley was not going to return to the team. They had guys that were getting serious minutes on the team, being real contributors that opted out, that didn't go with them down to Orlando for it. The whole energy was so strange. To be able to come up on top of it and be champion, I give you the highest respect, 2020 Lakers.
And Alex, Vernon Maxwell, Sam Cassell, Kenny the Jet Smith, and Hakeem Olajuwon. Make your case, sir.
Chris, I'm going to quote a great philosopher who once said, "Don't ever underestimate the heart of the champion." The man who said that is Rudy Tomjanovich, the coach of that 1995 Houston Rockets team. Has any champion ever shown more heart than the 1995 Houston Rockets? I don't think so.
Wow, short and sweet. 15 seconds left on the shot clock, gentlemen. We'll let the fans decide. Is the bubble title the hardest title ever won? This has been the Sports Central Showdown. We'll see you next week.
You're watching the Sports Central Showdown.